Namaste everyone. Thank you for joining for this edition of the Yoga of Desikachar dialogue series from around the world. It's very heartening to see all of you join in so early in the morning, Indian time, and late in the evening if you're from US. And this particular dialogue series is an initiative from Yogavahini and Ritambhara Ashram. And we began this series in 2021 on the occasion of the birthday of Sri TKV Desikachar. And we have been honored to have hosted very senior disciples of Sir in this dialogue series in the past few months. And we have a very special guest today to share her learnings and thoughts of growing as a teacher in this tradition. And to introduce her and to share more about the program, I invite Sri Ram. He's a long-term student of Sri TKV Desikachar and has built a community of yoga practitioners and teachers in Europe since 1988. I invite Sri Ram sir to introduce our guest for today and to speak about the program.
I'm extremely happy to be here, part of this program today, and I request Mekhala to open the session with chanting.
Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This is a chant that connected my father teacher to his teacher, and this is connecting to my teacher, so I'm sharing this chant with you all. Atha purusho havai narayano kamayata prajasrijeti Narayanat prano jayate manas sarvendriyani cha kham vayurjyotirapah prithvi vishwasya dharini Narayanat brahma jayate Narayanat rudro jayate Narayanadindro jayate Narayanat prajapatayah prajayante Narayanat dvadasha rudra vasavas sarvani cha chandagumsi Narayana deva samutpadyante Narayane pravartante Narayane praliyante Athanityo Narayanaha Brahma Narayanaha Shivascha Narayanaha Shakrascha Narayanaha Dyava Prithvyau cha Narayanaha Kalascha Narayanaha Dishascha Narayanaha Vidishascha Narayanaha Urdhvascha Narayanaha Adhascha Narayanaha Antarbahishcha Narayanaha Narayana Evedagum Sarvam Yadbhutam Yaccha Bhavyam Nishkalo Niranjano Nirvikalpo Nirakhyata Shuddho Deva Eko Narayanaha Nadvitiyosti Kaschit Ya Evam Veda Savishnureva Bhavati Savishnureva Bhavati Om ओमित्यग्रे व्याहरेत् नम इति पश्चात् नारायणायेत्युपरिष्टात् ओमित्येकाक्षरम् नम इति द्वे अक्षरे नारायणायेति पञ्चाक्षराणि एतद्वै नारायणस्याष्टाक्षरं पदम् यो ह वै नारायणस्याष्टाक्षरं पदमध्येति अनपब्रुवः सर्वमायुरेति विन्दते प्राजापत्यगुङ्रायस्पोषं गौपत्यम् ततो मृतत्वमश्नुते ततो मृतत्वमश्नुत इति ॐ प्रत्यगानन्दं ब्रह्मपुरुषं प्रणवस्वरूपम् अकार उकारमकार इति तानेकधा समभरत्तदेतदोमिति यमुक्त्वा मुच्यते योगी जन्म संसार बन्धनात् ॐ नमो नारायणायेति मन्त्रोपासकः वैकुण्ठभुवनलोकं गमिष्यति तदिदं परं पुण्डरीकं विज्ञानघनम् तस्मात्तडिदावन्मात्रम् ब्रह्मण्यो देवकी पुत्रो ब्रह्मण्यो मधुसूदनो ॐ सर्वभूतस्थमेकन्नारायणम् कारणरूपमकारपरब्रह्मो एतदथर्वशिरो यो धीते प्रातरधीयानो रात्रिकृतं पापन्नाशयति सायमधीयानो दिवसकृतं पापन्नाशयति माध्यन्दिनमादित्याभिमुखो धीयान पञ्चपातकोपपातकात् प्रमुच्यते सर्ववेदपारायण पुण्यं लभते नारायण सायुज्यमवाप्नोति श्रीमन्नारायण सायुज्यमवाप्नोति य एवं वेद इत्युपनिषत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
I presume that Mekhala is one of the youngest students of our teacher, Sri Desikachar. Also, in that sense, I'm very happy to receive and have her as part of the series here. So Mekhala grew up in Chennai, of course, in the household of Sir. And since the last 20 years, she's been living more or less most of the time in the US, particularly in Arizona, where she is now residing with her husband and her 2 children. And of course, you can imagine that she's been very close to yoga and has learned a lot from her father, about which she'll be speaking. And I personally have a very beautiful sort of picture of her as a person, as a human being, because I had the opportunity together with my wife of hosting her along with her father in Germany during the time we made the recording of the Vedic chant series, and we could be the witness of a beautiful daughter-father relationship and have the pleasant memories of Sir and Mekhala at our home. So I'm really thrilled to have you speak now, Mekhala. And I know you're an engineer by profession, but a yoga practitioner by personal sort of profession in terms of what you really sort of feel for. So I'm very happy that you'll be speaking about this. And a lover of roses and plants, my wife whispers to me. Okay, so
Yes, thank you for taking care of me, Uncle, and Anjalika auntie. Thank you for introducing me, Uncle. I see a lot of old students of Appa. Namaskaram to everybody. I don't want to say the names in case I miss somebody, and then I don't want to do that. So, namaskaram to all of you here. So happy to see everybody. Of course, I'm not able to see everybody on the view, only some of you here. So, seeing each one of you brings such beautiful memories of childhood, which I don't think I will have if I don't see people like you. And as Sriram Uncle was saying, you're all my senior. So your knowledge and experience will be more than me. So if I make a mistake, please forgive me. And taking anticipatory bail, I think. Anyway, thank you so much. So, and also thank you for Ritambhara and Yoga Vahini. I'm so happy to be in this space today, especially because all of you, by talking about Appa, I know you all refer to him as sir. It kinds of feel odd for me to call him as sir, so I'll just refer as Appa because I always call Appa. So you, all of you, by talking about Appa, you are bringing him in the life of so many of the other people, so many of the people who are listening to this. So you're bringing him into their lives as well. So I really appreciate your gesture. Thank you. And I'm so happy to be a part of this venture of yours. So to start the talk, I was just saying what I should be talking, and then so many things keep coming in my mind. So I don't know if I can fit it in all in 1 hour, but I'm going to try my best to keep it as concise as I can. So I was listening to some of the other speakers, and Raghu uncle was saying that Appa used to call him a wild child. And even Jyotsna auntie was saying the same thing, that I think we were all wild, and Appa just took us all in. So I was thinking, if wild means being a non-conformist, I think Appa was also wild. Because he also did not conform to the norms during the times that he actually took up yoga as a full-time endeavor. The story, I would like to start with how Appa got introduced into this field. I know the story is very famous. Appa has told this in many of his seminars, but just to start off, to give a background to somebody who might not know. So Appa is studied engineering, and he was a gold medalist in his college, and he was working in ONGC, and on one of his trips home, he saw his teacher, his father, T. Krishnamacharya, outside, and there was this foreigner, a lady who came in early in the morning and hugged my grandfather. And my father was shocked because, you know, he is a very traditional person. So then he quietly went and asked his father after that, what happened? Why did this lady hug you? I've never seen you hug my mother, you know, like that. So he then, my grandfather told him that this lady could not sleep for so many years, and yesterday was the first day she slept without medicine throughout the night. So this was something that triggered an interest in my father, and he saw something, there is something in yoga that everybody can use, and he felt that this should not get lost. And I think he he started pursuing his classes with his father, and that is how he ventured into this field. So ultimately his goal was to bring out this teaching of yoga where it can be applied to help people. And this was the intention why he started the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram in 1976 as a non-profit organization. It was also as a Guru Dakshina for his teacher, as well as to bring the benefits of yoga to everybody, the true benefit of yoga to everybody. So this is the small background, very concise, as to how Appa came into the field of yoga. And my earliest memory of Appa was that he was putting me in his lap and putting me to sleep, and he was chanting. And I remember that let me sleep so Appa will stop chanting, because it was not very interesting for me at that time. But I'll tell you this, I think if Appa was singing a lullaby, I think I would have woken up. I think Shriram uncle will agree to this. I don't think Appa was good at singing. And if Jyotsna auntie is here, please forgive me. I'm making fun of Appa. Please forgive me, but I'm just telling you this. So this is the earliest memory that I have of Appa putting me to sleep. And I think it was either Pranapanau or Yopam Pushpam Veda. I'm not sure of that. But then I know I slept very quickly listening to that chant. This is the earliest memory that I have. And of course, chanting, yoga was always part of our house all the time. And then when my grandfather was alive, there used to be a huge bell in our puja room that used to ring at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when you wake up, but eventually learn to overcome that and sleep. So these are some of the childhood memories that I have regarding chanting and yoga. And so growing up in such an environment, I used to see so many people coming all the time to our house, falling at Appa's feet or thanking him for making their life better. And then I was like, wow, this is something great. I have to be like Appa, so people will come and fall at my feet like that. This is what I thought in the beginning. I mean, I didn't understand what was happening. But anyway, I think silently through that, he became my inspiration, and I began to look up to him, respecting him for what he is over time. And as I grew older and older, I understood the depth of his work, and I truly understood why people were so thankful to him. And I think I am influenced by him a lot from whatever my husband tells me. He says, you're a lot like your dad. So I think I'm influenced by him subconsciously because I was inspired by him. So this is just a small background in terms of growing up in such a household. I'm sure Amma was also chanting when she was pregnant, so I'm exposed to chanting earlier, even that way. And so I was going to talk about, so as I started learning from Appa more seriously, and then there are some of the things that what I would call my takeaways from him. There are a lot, but I'm just going to concentrate on just a few that I feel are the most important principles that he followed as a teacher. Many of you have already spoken about how Appa was very simple and what a keen observer he was, and nothing missed his eyes, and he was very, he adapted. So many of you have already spoken about that. So there are some other things that I also wanted to speak about. So the first thing I wanted to say was all of his practices that he gave to people was very simple, but very scientific. So there was some concept behind that. It was not like some magic or anything. There was a logic behind it, and he had very scientific reasons as to why a particular practice was given to this person and why not to another person who had the same problem. So he was very Yet the practices were very simple, but scientific. And the other thing I also saw, as all of you have already talked about, was his adaptability. He was able to adapt the practice to the person in front of him, like a tailor who could stitch the shirt to your size. And so, for example, Appa always uses examples to explain. So if I have to give an example, a very simple example, so if he has to teach or get the benefit of, let's say, Uttanasana to somebody, but the person cannot do Uttanasana, he knew a way to adapt and bring out the function of Uttanasana somehow and make the person do it. This was I think, one of his amazing skills. And it was very necessary for the time that he was in, because people were losing their flexibility. If you were only looking at asana, there are other things. I'm just giving an example in terms of asana. It's easier for people to visualize. So that's one simple example as to how he was able to adapt the practice. And the most important thing that he emphasized was the teacher-student relationship was very important. He gave a lot of importance to that. And this was connected to what we call as Shraddha. Shraddha means conviction, either in what you do or in your teacher. So to emphasize more on this, Appa saw a lot of students. So we make a lot of encounters in our life. We see a lot of people and they just remain as encounters. But I feel that Appa made every encounter with the people that he met into an anubhavam for them. Anubhavam means experience. So he somehow made every encounter into an anubhavam, and experiences are stored in our memory. If it is a positive experience, it becomes whatever it is, it's positive or negative, it gets stored into our memory. Only when it becomes an experience, then it is a strong memory. So when this memory of a good anubhavam is there with the teacher, when the person is practicing or comes to the institute, the memory of this anubhavam comes and his or her Shraddha improves or increases. And this in turn, I feel, helped everybody heal more effectively and within a shorter period of time. There was more Shraddha because there was a memory of this positive experience. Appa had many ways of creating this experience for the seeker. I would call a student a seeker because they can be there with him to seeking knowledge or seeking a solution for their problem. So I would call them as a seeker. So there were many ways he turned this interaction into an anubhavam for them. But one of the simplest ways, or one way he did that, was through the use of chanting. This is my view on this, that he used chanting. I'm sure he had other subtle ways of doing it, and I don't think I was mature enough to understand that. So my understanding was he used chanting as one of the ways to create this anubhavam for the seeker. Since I have mentioned chanting here, let me briefly tell the viewers what chanting is. Chanting, what I am referring to chanting, is Adhyayanam, what we call in Sanskrit as Adhyayanam. Adhyayanam is, simply put, recitation of whatever your teacher says, you're reciting it exactly, same speed, same pronunciation, everything same, exactly the same way. And mostly these chanting was the chanting of the Vedas. Vedas, I would put it as scientific information or knowledge that is coded. It's a coded information. We have not been able to decode it completely. So this is just coded information. Appa used to say, whatever you want to know, the answer for that is in the Vedas. You just have to decode it. So chanting was also a way of learning in the ancient times. Any system, or it was a way of transmission of the teachings also. So for example, if you have to learn the Yoga Sutra, then the first thing that is taught is chanting of the Yoga Sutras. You learn to recite the text. And we all know that even children learn anything faster when there is a tune put to that. So chanting was a way teaching was transmitted, teaching was also taught. And then if you want to put it scientifically, chanting stimulates certain parts of the brain to create certain responses in the body and the mind. If you look at it scientifically, and let me tell you this, there is research also backing this concept. And what they, in fact, there is even a term for that. They call that psychoneuroimmunology, where they say psychological factors affect our immune responses. And I think chanting plays a huge role in creating positive psychological responses in us. So once we have positive psychological responses, so when we are able to tackle the psychological part of that in a positive way, then our immune system is also going to respond in a positive way. And I think, though Appa may not have known, or let me rephrase that, maybe scientifically Appa would not have, would not have been able to say this happens, this happens, this happens. But I feel that through his experience, he had an understanding that this was what was happening through chanting. And this was also one of the reasons why many a times when Appa goes to visit somebody who is not well, or somebody who comes who's very sick, he always used to chant to them. But going back to the concept of adaptability, tailoring to the person in front of him, if he felt that chanting was not appropriate for the person, he will not do the chanting. Only when he felt that it would be properly received and the benefit that it is meant to be will be there, he would do the chanting. I feel that, because he did not chant for everybody. He chanted for a few, he did not chant for a few. And these are all these concepts of chanting helping our immune system. This is all backed by research now. There's a very recent research, it's only about 40 years old, but it's there now. So what was in our ancient texts, we can now say, yes, scientifically, it's there. Now, also, if we have to back the student-teacher relationship, now my husband is in the field of medicine, he's a doctor, and now there is a concept that when there is a positive relationship between the patient and the physician, the patient is more receptive to the treatment than when it's, oh, hi, oh, okay, go, that's it, So there is a research now is backing, and now people are trying to emphasize on this aspect of healing. And I think Appa was far ahead in his thought process in understanding all this way before it can be proven scientifically. So he may not, so if sometimes I have asked him, Appa, okay, why did you do this? Why did you do this? So he will tell me, you will not understand this now, but you will learn this when you start teaching. So go teach. That's what he used to tell me. So he did not reveal all of that. So some of the things he expected us to experience and learn on our own. So that is something brief about chanting. So going back, so I would re-emphasize that he paid a lot of attention to student-teacher relationship, and I'm sure all of the older KYM teacher like Saraswati auntie, Sheila auntie, Jyotsna auntie, everybody who is here will know that Appa always, whenever he did consultation, he always called the teacher, introduced the teacher personally. Even if the teacher was not available, he will say, ask the student, please come back tomorrow, I need to introduce to the teacher. Make sure that a proper teacher-student introduction was done, so that going back, so that this anubhavam was pleasant, this relationship was strong, and through which the shraddha could be maintained and the person would receive maximum benefit through the encounter, through the practice and the teaching. So this is, I would stop here with the general idea of Appa's teaching. But before, I would also like to talk about yoga therapy, because I feel that Appa brought out this dimension of yoga, where yoga can be used as a tool for therapy. I think he really did an amazing job in bringing out this aspect of yoga, because mostly yoga is mostly thought of as doing asana, or sitting down and doing meditation, dhyanam. That's the general idea. I'm not blaming the people. If they have had the right teachers, I think they would have had the right information on that. But this was something that he worked on, and I think that is why he even started the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram. And this was something that he worked on, and he was, I think, in my opinion, he was really good at it. At the time when I was observing him, he was so good at it that we just couldn't figure out how is it that he comes to these conclusions. It was something like, it's not possible. How did he do that? So I think he brought out this dimension, and I think he was a master at it. In context to yoga as a therapy, I would also like to add the concept of yoga as a yukti. So he did not just use asana, pranayama, or dhyanam, or meditation, or chanting. These were not the only tools that he used to help people who had some problems. Whatever he felt will help them. It can be outside these tools of asana, pranayama, meditation. Whatever he felt will help them, he will suggest that. For example, he has, this is sometimes asked his students, just go and take just black and white pictures. That's it. That is the treatment for you. For somebody, it will be like, go on a pilgrimage. I have seen this. For somebody, he'll be go on a pilgrimage. And for somebody, it will be like, this diet. Do this diet for 3 months. And of course, chanting, just chanting. So the yukti part of that, again, comes with his adaptability. So whatever he felt, and I have also seen sometimes he just has suggested, just buy a dog for the family. So many things like this. It's been like, and they will all come back and say it's helped them so much. So he was not a stickler, you have to only do your asana, pranayama, or meditation, only that. If he thought that these tools will not help them, and if there was something else that will help them, he has used that. So once these tools have helped them a little bit, then he will bring in the tools of either pranayama, asana, or meditation as the next step. So I think this was one of the other things that I have observed about Appa. And the other thing is I'm sure everybody knows, his dietary recommendations. He's had like so many dietary recommendations for people who come for therapy. And once my mother-in-law had some problem, and I told him, please come and take some classes with my appa, and she was like, oh, no, I don't know if I can follow his dietary recommendations. I don't know if I can follow that. So he was amazing. And it always worked. It always worked. Sometimes he has suggested, just along with the practice, you have to eat only chakra pongal, sweet pongal, for 3 months, 3 times a day. That's it. Or only yogurt rice. That's it. No other meal. And people have come out of that along with the practice. So his dietary recommendations were also amazing. That was something that was I don't know what to say that. And he had, whenever the person who came in front of him, he did not, when they say, okay, I'm having this pain, that pain, he just did not go by what they were saying. He made sure that whatever they were saying was true. So he had his own ways of diagnosing. And one of the greatest diagnostic tools he had was pulse reading. He was so good at reading the pulse that sometimes he just had to take the pulse and he will probably know what was wrong, and he will then ask them to do some movements to confirm his findings. To give you an example, there was once a person who had come. I don't remember what the problem was, but he came and he sat down, and Appa took his pulse, and he asked him, do you get angry very often? And then the mom who was sitting next to this person, and he was like, sir, how did you know? That is his problem. And then Appa just smiled. And then there was another instance when there was somebody who came with a chest pain, and then he was going to go see a doctor, and Appa took his pulse and gave some practices, and he was okay. And it was something that was, he had this amazing, the subtleties of the pulse. He was able to read the subtleties of the pulse and make conclusions. And this was something, when I asked him, Appa, teach me how to read the pulse. I want to be like you. And he's like, Ma, this is not something that you can just learn. You have to practice this, and you have to make your own judgments and make your own conclusions based on how you read it. So this was something, and I think many of you can vouch on this, on what I'm saying firsthand. You must have also seen this. So these are some of the things that I wanted to talk about. And something else that I wanted to add, Appa was very devoted to his teaching and to his teacher. He had amazing devotion to his teachings and teacher. And there was a few years back, our family was having a very stressful situation. It was very, we were all in a very stressed out. It was not a good situation for us. But even at that time, and I think Appa had a understanding that his health was not doing well. So I saw him, he used to translate. He just sat down, he used to be translating all his works all the time. And on one of the summer vacations that I was there, we used to buy pens so many times during the week, because he was like at it. There was, it was a very difficult situation in the family, but he was able to overcome that distraction and be devoted to this teaching, and make sure that the teaching will not be lost, and that, make sure that people will somehow benefit from this, and that it will not be lost. And I think it was, that was some amazing dedication that he had to the teaching and his teacher. That's something I just cannot forget it, So that was, I think that is it. And And I must tell you, all of you, that you have already all spoken also, that Appa was very generous. And I'm sure you have all had my all our share of badam halwas and everything. So he always used to, whenever people used to come, he's like, Menaka, go get badam halwa. He won't even know if there is halwa or not. And then my mom will be like so upset at him at the end of the day. Sir, you are asking me to get halwa, but there is no halwa in the house. That was how it was. So you all of you owe me badam halwa. Yeah, but that, I think many of you know about that, and I'm sure somebody also spoke about aparigraha, where Appa never received. He'll get to take it from here and give it somebody else. And I remember once, there was something that was very precious that my grandfather had, and there was somebody who was not very well. He just took this from the puja room, and it belonged to his grandfather, his father, his teacher. Even though he was so sentimental to him, he felt that this person will benefit from this. He just gave it to them so that they will feel better. So whatever will help the student, he was there to do it for them. And one more thing, if he felt that he could not help them, he always directed them to somebody else. So there was once a lady who had come, and Appa felt that he cannot help her, and he told her, I cannot help you. Please go see my uncle, Mr. Iyengar. He will be able to help you. So I think he didn't have that aspect where if somebody comes to him, he didn't think of it as a failure. In fact, he just felt that, okay, I'm not able to help this person. I think I should direct them somewhere else. And then he did this. So these are some of the cumulative thoughts that I thought I can share with you all. And if any of you would like to add to this or ask me something, I'll try my best to answer.
Thank you, Mekhala, for sharing. We do have many of our senior teachers in the session, and also a lot of participants joining in on Zoom as well as on Facebook. It's being live streamed. So I invite any questions, and we have an interactive session for about 20-30 minutes now. So any reflections, questions are welcome.
So, Mekhala, my first question, may I ask the question, Hari?
Yes, sure.
Yes, so, Mekhala, question is, in your own experience practicing yoga, it's the first part of the question. Second part is teaching yoga. How have you sort of used or even experienced these teachings? Could you say something about your personal practice experiences which bring this out, what you spoke of, sir, or your teaching experiences, of course, too? Yeah. I hope my question is clear.
Yes,
I'll reframe it.
I understand. How I have benefited from practicing?
Not just benefited, but also, benefit is one part of it, but also what you might have experienced,
Sure.
Yeah.
Let me. So one of the first things that come to my mind is that sometimes I get very annoyed with my kids, and I lose my cool. And at that time, if I have a chanting class to teach, or if I do some chanting, I have felt that I was able to, after the class, I have been able to come out of that, feeling very tensed. Or so in that way, chanting has helped me overcome sometimes very tensed situations. When I chant, I feel better. And in another way is, when my daughter was born, when I would say is that when I was pregnant and when I was in the going to deliver, uh, I was not very relaxed and my labor was extending. And then at that time, Amma was there with me, and then she started chanting to me. And then once she started chanting for an hour or so, then it helped me and it hastened my uh, process. I was able to go into the labor pain, all that steps. I was able to reach those steps quickly. So that is one more anubhavam, I would say. And now during COVID, I can say my practice is helping me because my husband works with COVID patients every day. And so far I have been able to handle it well. Uh, we haven't fallen sick or anything. And and there was a time when I had a very bad knee pain, and practicing, Appa gave me a practice that also helped me. I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm trying to see if there are specific examples to see how yoga has helped me in. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Very definitely. It's very interesting what you've said. And of course, the second part of the question, in your own teaching experience, whether, whether it has enhanced what you experienced as a student with your father, and of course, maybe some other experiences which are new to you, which you experienced through teaching others. Let's say what chanting does, or what yoga therapeutic work does. And also for you as a person who's not teaching with the support of you, with your sort of immediate support, or live support of your father, but far away in another country, etc.
Another culture.
Culture.
In terms of teaching, if whenever I had a question, when Appa was there, I can ask him over a phone call. I need some help in this, and he has always helped me. So that he was able to help me whenever I have asked him. And I have experienced this teacher-student relationship that Appa has emphasized on in my teaching experience, that when the relationship is good, that even if I don't teach any practice, my students have felt better, and they look forward to the class, and they just come, just chat, and then they feel better. So that teacher-student relationship, I feel it has that aspect of what I observed from Appa, from my teaching, it has confirmed for me the importance of that. That is very important. And chanting, like I said, that it helped me personally, and also I feel that when I teach chanting to people, even though they don't understand the language, they are still able to benefit from that, because they feel that they are less anxious after chanting. They feel calm. And these are some of the things that I observed with what Appa was doing, and I have observed it when I have been teaching also. I'm not able to say anything new yet.
Yeah.
I'm not so much more experienced that I can add to yet. I'm not able to add to anything else that I have experienced through my teaching. Basically, it all goes back to, oh, this is what Appa did. This is why Appa did. So, it always goes back to that. And I feel that this is all something that I took from Appa, and I'm this way, like that.
There's one insight in that regard which you can give us, actually, because you, as a daughter and as a student, it would have not always been very simple to know when you are a daughter and when you're a student. In the same way, when you say you sometimes received students and you just didn't teach them anything and they just came and chatted with you and left and they felt good, how do you make sure that they remain students and they just don't come by as friends and spend some time with you, like I can also go to a friend and feel good. So how do you maintain that relationship after such meetings where you may not teach anything? That's very important, I think, for all yoga teaching people. So maybe from your experience, it'll be very interesting to hear about you that.
I think what I learned from Appa in this regard, I'm so happy you brought this up, is so he always told me that when I'm teaching a student, I should not get emotional. And then when the student is expressing their problem, I should not get entangled in that. And then, I cannot cry, get emotionally involved in that. Because once I get emotionally involved, then I lose my clarity. Because there, even though the person is talking with me freely, I'm actually acting as a guide there. I'm just listening to them, because at that time I feel that listening is the best way that is going to help them. So I should not be emotionally involved. At the same time, I should be listening to them, because if I don't get emotional, then I will have my clarity of thought and I will be able to guide them in the right way. So more, I would say, in times where people are just they just feel like chatting with me, I'm not acting as a friend. I would say like a counselor or like a guide. And I have to make sure that I have my clarity and I'm not getting involved too deeply, so that because once I get emotional, then I may get angry at what has happened to this person or why this has happened. Once you get angry, then you have lost your clarity. So then I may not be able to guide them correctly. So I think this was also there was once I think I felt bad for a student and I was very upset, and this was when Appa told me, you cannot be like this. So I think that is the distinction you can make, like you are not a friend but as a guide there. And as a daughter and as a student, I think when we were having classes, we were pretty serious that I am here to learn and receive and not take advantage that he's my father, so I think that depends. I think I probably fairly did a good job in maintaining that. I did not take advantage. And I think Appa also fairly was able to distinguish, as far as I know, was able to distinguish between being a teacher and being a father. Because sometimes he used to he say go and practice. We always didn't go and practice, as kids, how we are all, we try to get away from it. so he will say, go to Motamadi, do 108 Surya Namaskara or something. Then you know what happens in the Motamadi. But he knew, I think, that we didn't practice, but he did not get angry with us or anything like that. But when you are in the class with him, then the dynamics is different. The dynamics of it is a different dynamics. You do what he asks you to do, so the dynamics are different at that time. I feel that.
Yes, it's true. Yeah. Nice. Thank you for the answer.
Yeah, Mekhala, can I
Sure, Uncle.
come in for a moment? No, it's really, really nice to listen to you, ma.
Thank you, Uncle.
Yeah,
I'm so
so
happy to
many,
hear that.
yeah, so many memories get triggered, and when you talk, there are so many gestures that you make, and your tone of voice and all that, which is very much like sir.
Oh, that's a big compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually have one small question, ma.
Yeah,
Yeah, see,
I'll try my best
and
to answer.
yeah, there are two things that sir started to work on after my time in KYM, let's say. One was this nyasam, yeah, sound and nyasam. The other one was Ayurvedic massage.
Yes.
Yeah, he once took me, when I went to meet him, he said, look, I'm doing this newly. This is the table I use. This is what I do
Mm.
and whatever. Do you know what triggered these two things? Because these were so simple. I know one person who had a shoulder problem for whom he just taught this sound and yasam, and I know that they felt but much better and so on. They were actually cured. But
Um,
what do you know what triggered this?
um, I'm aware that Appa learned under Dr. Narayana Swami, who was an
Hmm.
Ayurvedic physician. So he took a lot of training under him. And uh, I'm not sure about how what triggered the massage, how he was able to come up with that idea. And Nyasam, I think he was also practicing Nyasam. And when he does Nyasam, when I have seen him, when he is doing his prayer to his teacher, I have seen him doing Nyasam in that. So a theory could be that probably he saw some benefit in that and decided that he could probably use it. And in Sandhya Vandanam also they use Nyasam.
We have.
So I think that possibly he connected something scientific with that Sandhya Vandanam Nyasam and applied it to the teaching. That probably could have triggered that. I don't have any more, information on that. Sorry.
చూడబాగా గడ్డలు గడ్డలుగా
Thank you.
అది ఉంటుంది గడ్డలుగా ఉండేది
Anything else? Did I answer your question, Uncle? Okay.
Yes, Yane, I think.
Hello. I have a question. I have just finished a yoga teaching training, and I wonder if what do you think about studying Ayurveda? Do you think it's necessary for being a better yoga teacher? Thank you.
Can you please repeat the second part of the question? I understood that you have completed your training.
Yes, and I wanted to know if you think it's necessary to study Ayurveda in order to be a better yoga teacher.
Okay. It is necessary to study Ayurveda. I wouldn't term it as Ayurveda, but there is a lot of science now that is showing the importance of diet and certain health conditions. There are a lot of science behind dietary recommendations. A lot of science now. So I think some knowledge about certain problems and food would definitely help. Yes, but I wouldn't call that as Ayurveda, because Ayurveda also talks about food and how it affects our body. But there is also science now So if there is a way you can get that information about how food affects the body, then I think it will definitely help you.
Hari, how many questions there are there?
We haven't received anything on the chat yet.
Okay,
So-
then maybe Saraswati and Jyotsna should.
Yeah. May I have a question, please, Mekhala? This is Jyotsna.
Yes, I didn't see you, Auntie. I was wondering where you were.
Sorry, I was off the video when you were speaking. But first of all, like TV said, it was wonderful to listen to you. It brought back a beautiful fragrance of your father.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for just being yourself. Um, I have a question because sometimes when we look at teachers, you were emphasizing very rightly the relationship between a teacher and a student. And when we see very strong teachers, they leave behind a lot of students. But I felt in your father's case, he left behind a lot of teachers. To me, this is a big difference on the world stage. So I was wondering, because you have been a student, like we're all repeating ourselves, but you have been his daughter. It's a very unique position that you hold. It is emotional as well as intellectual. And for me, the question is, what do you feel was his process of enabling people who came to him and not actually disabling them into a sense of submission and feeling like students? Right? Because like you said, even when you were younger, much younger, he would say, go and teach.
Yes.
Right? For me, this is a very important question I have held because I think as we grow older and we have people we work with, this is a big question in my mind saying, how do I enable and not really disable them? And I think Appa did it. So could you please share something on that, Mekhala?
Definitely.
Thank you.
So this comes back to when when I was learning from Appa, I used to ask Appa, yeah, Appa, give me some more classes, let's study. Can you please teach me this text, or can we read this text? So he used to tell me that, Mekhala, it is more important to teach than to know all these texts. The more you teach, the better you understand these teachings, the more you will be able to uh, grow in this field of yoga. Because the concept of knowing what you're doing is very important. So because Appa always did his practice, so he did not ask others, go and practice, and it was not like he was not practicing. He was always up at 4:30. His routine was there. He practiced 3 times a day. And so he always practiced and then he taught. So he felt that what I would say is, only when you teach, I think you understand what you have learned better. And I think Appa knew this very well. And that's why he always encouraged everybody, go and teach, go and teach, go and teach. And I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, Auntie, but I'm probably will come to that. And he always also, in many of his lectures, especially outside of India, he has always said that a teacher should never exploit the student, and the student should never blindly believe the teacher in the first few meetings. Never. You have to make sure that before you trust the teacher, you make sure that this is a right teacher for you, and that so the teacher should not abuse the student, and the student should not be blindly following what the teacher says. There has to be some it should not be blind. There should be some, he will always say, keep your eyes open. I mean, please do what the teacher says, but also keep your eyes open. So this was also something he emphasized in everybody. And I think he also started, once he started learning from his teacher, I think he also immediately started teaching. So I think he felt that as being a teacher, he was able to be a better student and he was able to learn better because he was teaching. So I think that's something he learned, and he tried to do that with all of the people who came to learn from him. I think it was through his experience that he figured out that. And also, he also believed that the teachings of yoga should not get stuck with him. He felt that it should not be stuck with him, because then he always felt, okay, if this gets stuck with me, then if I die, then the teachings just die with me. He didn't want that. That's why he made sure that everybody taught, so that this teaching can progress. I think that could be also one of the reasons why, as you nicely put it, he didn't leave behind students, but he left behind teachers, so that this transmission doesn't stop with him.
Very perceptive.
Beautifully put, Mekhala. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Saras.
Hi, Mekhala.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Like what Jyotsna was saying, you really brought Sir alive for all of us.
Thank
I
you.
should say that every yukti that he used, I have experienced it personally. Every yukti you're talking about, you just brought all these memories very alive.
Yes.
So the question I have for you, Mekhala, is our personal practice also keeps evolving as we're growing older, we study more, as we teach more. Can you talk about your practice and the evolution of your practice?
Yes. So when I started, as we were young kids, we were always doing all difficult asanas and then chanting. My first chanting teacher was, I wanted to mention Sangeeta Prabhakaran, because she taught us chanting, so I have to acknowledge her. So anyway, so we started learning difficult asanas, but then there was, because I went to study outside of Chennai, then once I finished my master's and I was learning from Appa, I started learning difficult asanas. This is what was the main thing I was doing. A lot of difficult postures, very little pranayama. Once I went and told Appa, Appa, pranayama is so boring for me. Please, I don't know, but I want to do it. Can you somehow teach me? So he figured out some creative ways to keep it engaging for me, and I did that. So this was the how. So I was doing a lot of difficult postures. But then after childbirth, your body changes, and then I could not do whatever I was able to do, but still some asanas I was able to manage. I was able to do, and some pranayama. And then pranayama, I'll tell you, once I started doing pranayama, I'll sleep because I'm so tired. That's what it is. So pranayama was out of question at that time. So I just did some asanas. But so I would say that this is another thing that I wanted to actually talk about. It's good that you taught me. You brought this out. As Appa was teaching more and more, there were a lot of people who were coming and telling him, "Sir, we want to do yoga, but we don't have time." So when people were practicing, they were able to spend half an hour to 45 minutes. They were able to devote that time to that practice. After that, people don't have time. But then Appa felt, this shouldn't stop people. So what he actually creatively did was, he made the practice very short. he was able to get the benefit in a 10-minute practice. But he said, do this for 10 minutes, but do it twice a day. So do it in the morning, do it in the evening. So this way, the time constraint doesn't stop you from doing it. And the same situation came to me because I had time constraint because managing kids. So I had time constraint. So he used to give me very short practices. So I was doing short practices, sometimes once a day, sometimes twice a day, sometimes I just didn't do it. Because he also said that Swadharma is also important. Your duty as a mother takes over everything else. You cannot sacrifice that for this. So that was also one of the lessons he taught me. So anyway, coming back to the practice. So the practice was short. And now I'm much older. I don't do a lot of asana. My practice is more concentrated on breathing and meditation. And of course, I do some chanting also. So now that is how evolved. So it was mostly asana, and then it was short practices. And then now I have some time, so I'm able to do, but I don't do a lot of asana. This is something that I had to teach myself. Because Appa is not there. So from whatever I have learned from him, I was able to apply it, and I do a practice that has not much of asana, but more of pranayama and meditation, because peace of mind is important at this time with 2 kids. It's important to not lose school.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mekhala.
Thank you.
So we have a question from Patmaja. Patmaja, I'll add you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the lovely experience.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I have 2 questions. One is, can you talk about Om chanting? Just chanting Om, one. And second one is, how does chanting impact the menstrual cycle, the Vayu?
So we can come back to this. It again comes back to the psychological factors that affect our body. Om chanting specifically, there are certain studies that have been done that my husband actually helped me understand, that chanting Om repetitively, there are certain parts of the brain that are stimulated that help you to calm down and instigate certain positive responses. If I can answer that to you in a scientific way, we can answer that like that. And then menstrual cycle, I would say, why is the person having an issue with their cycle? That is something we have to first look at. Without knowing that part of it, chanting as how it affects menstrual cycles, because I think I'm assuming you are asking this question in relation to somebody having issues with menstrual cycle. Yes? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So if the issue is psychological, I think chanting will definitely help, provided they are open to it. But if the issue is something else, then we may have to look at some other solution. So I may not be able to answer that question with a yes or no, because it varies with the individual.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mekhala. So we have one more question, and this is from Duray Raj. Duray Raj, would you like to ask?
Ma'am, it's very happy to hear your experience. Like others say, it's you're sharing the tradition. And actually, right now I'm doing my YTTC in KYM. So I have one question, maybe silly, I don't know. See, um, when you compare to Iyengarji and Pattabhi, the main difference here on the practice of KOM is the linking the body, breath, and the mind in the practice. So is discovered later, or I just want to know why is the difference?
Okay. I will answer you this question, the same answer that my father gave when this question was put to him, because a lot of people around the world ask him the same question: how is it that you are all have the same teacher, but your teaching is different? Many people have asked him this question, and I'm giving you the same answer he gave. So 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 T Krishnamacharya is my father's teacher, also my grandfather. So Mr. Iyengar, Mr. Pattabhi Jois, and my father learned from Krishnamacharya during different phases of his life. So Krishnamacharya was also evolving his teaching according to the needs of the society. He was also adapting. So he was also catering to how the society was evolving. He was also adapting his teaching. So this is what Appa said. He said that Mr. Iyengar and Mr. Pattabhi Jois learned from Krishnamacharya when they were young. So that means when they were young, most of the things that were taught was only asana. And as kids, you cannot, not for kids, breathing is not so much emphasized. Only the asana part is emphasized for teaching kids, because they may coordinate the breathing, they may not coordinate the breathing. It's very hard for them. So that part of it was not emphasized. But then when Appa was learning, he was much older. So he was able to learn other aspects of Krishnamacharya's teaching. And hence, his teaching has also this aspect of breathing, body, mind, everything along with it. And of course, I said yoga, therapy, everything in God. This was because of, so for example, Mr. Iyengar learned from T. Krishnamacharya when Mr. Iyengar probably would have been 10 or 11 years old. So he learned only asanas. So he taught that. Same way, Mr. Pattabhi Jois also learned when Pattabhi Jois was young. So he was taught only asanas. So he taught that. This was the, I'm giving you the explanation what Appa gave as to why there is a difference in what they teach.
Thank you, ma'am.
We have a question from Krishna on chanting. Krishna, would you like to unmute?
I have typed it already. Can you read it out?
Okay, I'll read
Read
it out. Okay. So Krishna's question is, what did your father think about women chanting? As I understand, your grandfather was instrumental in teaching women in those days, while women were not taught much of Vedic chanting.
So my grandfather felt that this was what he called as apat kalam. That means it was a time when if chanting were not taught to women, it's going to disappear. So he decided to open chanting to women. And Appa was with him at this time when he made the decision. And he also felt that it was the right thing to do. And he started teaching women chanting. And he had no hesitancy, or he did not have any second thoughts about it. And he went ahead and do that. In fact, he has even said, in any conference that he goes, he always says there are always more women seekers than men seekers. He always says that. So he was very open about it. There was no reservation about it. And he also felt that because, if women there is even instances in our mythology that women were chanting. So somewhere in middle, I think it got lost. So I think if women can chant, they can teach their children. It's easier for moms to teach their children. So I think he had no reservation about it, and he was very up for it. And in fact, his pitch was so high that he could not teach women chanting because their bass pitch was very low. So he went and started learning music from, in fact, Sriram uncle was his music teacher. He started learning music to help him reach lower pitches so that he can teach women chanting. So that he gave a lot of importance to that, and he worked on it to make sure that this could be done, and that and he was very open for that.
Thank you, Mekhala. This inspires me to learn music as well.
Thank you, Krishna, for the question. And we are past the time that is scheduled for this dialogue. And I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. So thank you so much, Mekhala, for accepting our invitation to be here.
So I would just like to finish with a chanting on Shraddha. And I would like to do it with Sriram uncle. We will alternate, just because me, Sriram uncle and Appa, we have chanted together just to bring some old memory.
That will be lovely.
So,
yes, Sriram.
We'll alternate. And uncle, you please start.
Yeah, I'll start, but I need to say before that we are all extremely glad. I'm speaking for all the others who are sitting there, because I'm sure they all feel the same way, for your very beautiful talk, and it was very inspiring to have share that you have shared your energy and your understanding and your experiences with us. It's very beautiful.
I'm very glad to be a part of this, wherever you're bringing Appa into so many people's lives. So I'm glad to be a part of this.
Yeah, we are all extremely lucky to have had him and his presence. Yes, it was really an amazing part of all our lives. Yeah. So thank you so much. So we'll start. Yeah. Shraddhaya samidhyate.
Shraddhaya vindate havihi.
Shraddham bhagasya murdhani.
Vachasa vedayamasi.
Priyagushraddhe tadataha.
Priyagushraddhe didasataha.
Priyam bhojeshu yajvasu.
Idamma uditam kridhi.
Yatha deva asureshu.
Shraddha mugreshu chakrire.
Evam bhojeshu yajvasu.
Asmakamuditam kridhi.
Shraddham deva yajamanaha.
Vayurgopa upasate.
Shraddham hridayya kutya.
Shraddhaya huyate havihi.
Shraddham pratarhavamahe.
Shraddham madhyandinam pari.
Shraddham suryasya nimruchi.
Shraddhe shraddhapaye hama.
Shraddha devanadhivaste.
Shraddha vishwamidam jagat.
Shraddham kamasya mataram.
Havisha vardhayamasi.
Thank you, Sriram sir, and thank you, Mekhala.
Mekhala will do this Guru Ashtakam now.
Yes.
Yeah, very nice.
This is a chant composed by Adi Shankara. This the basic concept behind this chanting is, you may have all the knowledge, all the wealth, all the power, you may be the king, but if you are not humble, if you don't pay reverence to your teacher, all of that is nothing. That's what this chanting is. And I'll just finish with that chanting. Shariram surupan tatha va kalatram yashascharuchitram dhanam merutulyam manaschena lagnam gurorangripadme tatah king tatah king tatah king tatah kim Kalatram dhanam putra pautradi sarvam griham bandhava sarvametadhijatam manaschena lagnam gurorangripadme tatah king tatah king tatah king tatah kim Shadangadi vedo mukhe shastra vidya Kavitvaadigadyam supadyam karoti manaschena lagnam gurorangripadme tatah king tatah king tatah king tatah kim videsheshu manyasvadesheshu dhanyah sadachara vritteshu matto nachanyah Manaschena lagnam gurorangripadme tatah king tatah king tatah king tatah king aranyena va swasya gehena karye na dehe mano vartate me tvanarghye manaschena lagnam gurorangripadme tatah king tatah king tatah king tatah king gurorashtakanyah pathet punyadehi yatir bhupatir brahmachari chagehi labhedvanchitartham padam brahma sanyam guroruktavakye mano yasya lagnam. I just recited a few verses because of the time constraint.
Thank you everyone for joining us today for this dialogue. And thank you, Mekhala, for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for
We are getting so many messages on chat of how it was wonderful and beautiful listening to you. And there are also remarks of how you brought in some of the humor that many of them have experienced with your father. And so it has been, and there's a message from Vandita. I don't know you personally, but it was heartening to listen and very profound and touching. So thank you so much for joining. And to everyone who joined today, as we said at the start, this is a monthly series organized by Yoga Vahini and Ritambhara, and we'll be back with many more experienced and senior students of Sir in the coming months.
So Hari, do share the chats with Mekhala, yeah? With the chats, the responses which came.
Sure, I will collect it and I will add it here.
Yeah, nice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you once more very much, Mekhala.
Yes, thank you for meeting you all virtually. I'm so happy. Brings back so many memories.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for Ritambhara and Yoga Vahini for this opportunity.